Hey, it's Matt from Hidden Machine here, and all of you long-time fans of the channel will be sure to remember that last fall, I took a look at the demo for Postal Brain Damaged, and to be absolutely blunt, I thought the game sucked. I was just underwhelmed by almost every aspect of the game, and for the most part, it felt boring and uninspired. But that was the demo, and the full game is finally here. Despite me having almost nothing nice to say, Hyper Strange and Running with Scissors were nice or desperate enough to give me a review key, and I've spent the last couple of days playing through the game's campaign. So, do I think that the game improved over these last 8 months? Well, to put it very simply, yes. If you're looking for a classic 90s style FPS with loads of guns, varied enemy types, and big, sprawling levels, then Postal Brain Damaged will likely satisfy you. The game wears its influences on its sleeve, but it does enough through engaging level design and a fun arsenal to stand out as a solid boomer shooter, or, as the game describes itself, a boomy shooty spin-off to the Postal series. And for the record, I hate saying boomy shooty just as much as I hate saying no regrets, so I'm hoping that I never have to utter those words ever again. The game took me about 10 or so hours to complete and had me take on 15 levels across 3 episodes, with each episode culminating in a boss fight. Every level is full of fucked up enemies for you to battle using an arsenal of absurd weapons. The game takes place in the subconscious of the Postal dude, so you can expect things to get weird. And since this is a Postal game, you can expect plenty of Postal style humor. It's actually a little bit less in your face than the mainline games with the boner jokes, poop jokes, butt jokes, dildo jokes, pee-pee jokes, fart jokes, and so forth, but it's still always there, so if that's not really your thing, then tough luck. I'm going to talk about the enemies and the weapons and everything, but first I want to say that the level design is really strong in this game, and I think it strikes a really nice balance between the old maze-like levels of a lot of older FPS games, mixed with a sort of linearity that manages to keep things feeling focused and well-paced without ever really getting boring. I had a few moments of frustrating key hunting across the campaign, but that really came down to me just not looking at things closely enough. Each level should take you about 30 to 60 minutes if you're really looking around for secrets, although if you're familiar with the levels and the combat, you can blaze through each one in well under 10 minutes. I'll get into some more specifics of the level design a bit later on, but you can expect a diverse collection of maps, each with unique themes and mechanics. Each episode has you start with no weapons at all, and sees you slowly rebuilding your arsenal, and the way that different weapons will be available to you at different points in the game ensures that you're going to spend at least a little bit of time with each individual weapon. I think that it's a cool way to space things out and mix up the combat. You of course have a mighty foot, equipped with bunny slippers. This works just like the kick in any other FPS game, but with a twist. You can use this kick to parry projectiles coming at you, which will cause a brief slowdown and allow you to get the upper hand on an enemy. During my playthrough, I really didn't take advantage of this ability for some reason, but it's really fucking cool. In addition to that, you also have 9 proper weapons to choose from. There's a gas-powered shovel, which sort of acts like a chainsaw and can also be used to block attacks. A pistol, which has a lock-on alt-fire that allows you to send 3 homing shots to an enemy's weak spot. A Doom Eternal-style shotgun with a grappling hook. A machine gun-style nail gun with an alt-fire that allows you to fire a quantum break-like time stutter that will freeze enemies. There's a grenade/missile launcher, a brain-powered sci-fi ray gun that also fires giant electric brains, a chain gun with an alt-fire that shoots out a sticky tracer that will attract your bullets, allowing you to mark enemies for temporary homing fire. There's a sniper crossbow that shoots out dildos, And lastly, my favorite weapon, the Pussy Blower. Essentially, this gun is a modified vacuum cleaner attached to a cat carrier. The cats will act like powerful cannon ammo, and they'll just stick wherever you shoot them. You can then use the alt fire on this weapon to turn on the vacuum and retrieve up to 3 cats, which, when used properly, allows you to do massive damage without ever actually losing any ammo. A lot of the enemies in this game, if not all of them, seem to be directly inspired by enemies from classic FPS games. However, while a lot of these enemies are familiar, they're all put through a Postal filter, and a good number of them are sorta meta references to other games in the Postal series. In fact, the whole game has a lot of meta stuff going on, and I'll get into a lot of that later in the video, but if you're a fan of the genre, and of Postal in particular, there are a lot of fun references here, but thankfully the game also presents enough original ideas to not just feel like some cheap, fan-servicey rehash type thing. All in all, this is not the best or most innovative FPS or boomer shooter style game that I've ever played. In fact, over the last couple years, the term boomer shooter has come to kind of annoy me, because while there are a lot of games that are clearly repping a very 90s style, a lot of recent games that get put under the boomer shooter banner are introducing a lot of progressive and unique mechanics that totally transcend anything we saw in Doom, Quake, or any other classic FPS game. And they're really only stuck in that boomer shooter genre because they utilize a more retro visual presentation. But that said, I do think that Brain Damaged fits comfortably in the boomer shooter genre, even if it does have a parry and a grappling hook shotgun. The game really digs into what made a lot of older FPS games fun, and manages to avoid a lot of the more annoying aspects of those games, like waves of hit scan enemies and overly cryptic and hostile level design. If you like Postal and you like old school FPS games, you're gonna have a good time with this one. And if you wanted a spoiler-free review, well, that's it. From here on out, you can expect plenty of spoilers because I want to cover the story and the campaign. So if you're checking out here, please consider a like and subscribing, and feel free to comment down below and let me know what you think about Postal Brain Damaged. And for the rest of you, let's talk about the campaign. Each episode sees the Postal Dude embarking on a quest for a desired item. In the first episode, you're seeking a television. Episode 2 has you looking for toilet paper, and the final episode sees you tracking down an autograph from Leon Dusk, who is a strange amalgamation of the Dusk Dude from the game Dusk, the Postal Dude from the game Postal, and Elon Musk from reality. The whole game takes place in a dream. The Postal Dude is sitting down to watch a marathon of Uwe Boll movies, and then he feels weird and falls asleep. He wakes up in suburbia without a working television. The Postal Dude is now on a hunt for a TV, which is a scenario that reminds me a lot of Beavis and Butthead Do America. And the first stop on this quest is this suburban neighborhood that we previously visited in the game's demo. This is a pretty standard level, and some of my initial complaints about the game do still stand here. For instance, throughout the majority of my time with the campaign, it was hard to beat the simplicity of using my pistol as a sort of sniper rifle and headshotting enemies from across the map well before they ever became aware of me. Part of me feels like the game might benefit from a shorter draw distance, because there were so many times where I'd walk into a room or an area and just take out a bunch of enemies without ever having to directly engage with them. Now, I know that it is my choice to use that tactic, but in some ways, the fact that I could even do it at all felt kinda cheap to me. The game does offer a sniper-style crossbow that is really well suited for a couple of areas in particular, but I found myself regularly opting for the pistol over the bow simply because it was faster and just as easy to use over long distances. Another complaint I had in the demo is the fact that you can open all these windows, but not wide enough to actually enter them. Maybe this is related to some secret that I didn't pick up on, and now that I've said that, it probably is, but it just seemed like a very unnecessary and somewhat misleading mechanic. That's really about it on the negativity though, because the level serves as a fine introduction to the game. There's this codex that you can fill up, and it has little write-ups on the enemies, weapons, locations, and tutorials. Most of the codex entries are filled in by finding and collecting these posters that you see around the game world. I wasn't able to complete the codex on my first playthrough, so I don't know the official names of all the enemies, but this first level sees you fighting grumpy grandpas, burger boys, dogs, other dogs, and bigger demon dogs that have fused with their dog houses. And you'll shoot these things and think they're dead, only to have them come back to life a moment later. And to be honest, that tricked me every single fucking time. The first level also introduces you to the game's NPCs, which will take several different forms, but essentially these are generic human characters that you can slaughter in exchange for a single point of both health and armor. I think they made some of the models needlessly bouncy, but it is a Postal game. After a bit of key hunting, you're introduced to the grappling hook, which allows you to grab onto enemies, as well as certain environmental objects, like these glowing yellow rings. At the end of the level, you find your TV, but wait! It's a trap! A cage comes down around the Postal dude, and you find yourself in the next level, called the Bareback Redemption. A title which appears to take the gay ass fucking of a movie like Brokeback Mountain and the prison setting of the Shawshank Redemption, and combines them into a rather tired and tasteless joke about prison butt sex of a possibly non-consensual nature. But again, this is a Postal game after all, so let's move on. From behind the bars of your cell, you see yourself, the Postal dude, holding your TV set hostage and then running away in a Roadrunner meep meep style. You then proceed to make your way through a nightmarish prison, complete with disgusting sewers and a handful of new enemies, like the Saxobone, who appears to be a fucked up manifestation of the Postal dude's memories of the infamous marching band, an enemy that goes hand in hand with the Cheer Killer. This level also introduces my most hated enemy in the game, the Monkey from Hell, which endlessly spawns these other monkeys called Annoying Monkeys, who just persistently rush at you until you take out the Monkey from Hell. This level ends with a really severe enemy rush that initially I thought I had to clear out, but after a few tries, I realized that I could just rush to the level's exit. In order to do so, you need to make use of your own urine. Of course, being a Postal game, there is a dedicated piss key, and you'll occasionally need to fill up these urinals that have a cock and ball looking sort of mechanism inside of them that will raise up as you fill the urinal with piss. You escape through the prison sewers only to wind up in Mexico for the third level titled T-Day. This is where I experienced my first major ammo shortage, but I later realized that the game features a few vending machines that will fully replenish all of your ammo, and there's a good chance that I missed one during the prison level. This is also the first point in the game where I realized that there's a chance to trigger some infighting among the enemies. I was low on ammo, so I let off a few shots and lured the enemies to this, wall. At first, I thought that they were jumping onto the barbed wire and hurting themselves, but I'm pretty sure that they were attacking me and just catching one another in the crossfire. This will happen at a few different points in the game, and when you can actually figure out how to trigger it and make it happen, it feels pretty good. This is also the first level in the game where the music began to kinda drag on me. I think that all of the music in the game is pretty good. Maybe not always super memorable in terms of catchy melodies, but every song in the game has a distinct vibe that really works well with the theme of the level in which it appears. The build of the game that I played had a small bug that would cause the combat music to fail to trigger in some levels, so maybe the level music is a little less monotonous when it's broken up during battles, but some of these pieces of music will loop a dozen or more times per level, and it can get a little tiresome. If you're like me, you just throw on a podcast and drown it out, but otherwise, you're gonna get really familiar with some of these songs. This level also features an annoyingly persistent projectile being launched at you every few seconds. In addition to the explosive jumping beans and sentient mustaches, there's a lot of room for frustration in this level. It all culminates in finally reaching a giant cannon, which I assume is the same giant cannon that's been firing at you this whole time. You turn it around and fire it at a wall of enemies, and it does nothing. I didn't record that part of the game, so maybe it opened up a wall or something that I just misread visually, but it felt very anticlimactic. For whatever reason, this was probably my least favorite level, and it had me wondering if it'd be worthwhile to stick it out with this game. In the end, I'm really glad I did, because the rest of the levels are much stronger from here on out. The next level, Bigger on the Inside, feels at least in part like an homage to Quake, and also really starts to show the sort of puzzle-based level design that you'll see in a lot of the game going forward. You'll battle these slithering gimps, swing around on your grappling hook, and take on the basement dwellers, who are essentially mages that shoot giant exploding fireballs. After you make your way through this twisting labyrinth of a level, you resurface on the path to the Walmart Uber Center, a parody version of Walmart that seems to have a swastika-style logo, but again, it is a Postal game. Turns out it's Black Friday, so you can expect the store to be swamped. You make your way through a stretch of desert and into the store, where you'll fight the game's first boss, Karen, the Manager Slayer. It's a giant domineering white woman. I found this boss arena to be a lot of fun. There's really nice elevation and places to run around and find ammo, and all in all, it's a fun, chaotic battle. After slaying the Manager Slayer, the Postal Dude is reunited with his TV, but the Uwe Boll Marathon is taking place in the real world, and he's stuck in the dream world. He supposes that if he falls asleep in the dream, he might wake up in reality. But then he comes face to face with a sexy shotgun and decides that he needs to take a big shit. But first, he needs to find some toilet paper, and thus begins the second episode of the game, in which the dude searches for toilet paper. If you were alive during the year 2020, you might remember toilet paper shortages that were a result of COVID-19. It might not seem like it at the moment, but as we progress through this second episode of the game, it'll become apparent that this quest for toilet paper is a sort of metaphor for the toilet paper shortages that so many people experienced at the height of the recent global pandemic. The Postal Dude now finds himself in an asylum, where he'll encounter a new NPC type, the Asylum Victim, as well as some new enemy types like the Lobotomized Creep, the Vaccinated, and the Clown Elemental, who will spit out the Lost Clowns. This level really builds on the puzzle-based design that we saw on Bigger on the Inside, and introduces some very interesting mechanics that mess with space and perspective. Oh yeah, it also introduces an enemy called Farty Pants, which is a giant turd ball wearing a face mask on its chin that will perform a fart-based AoE attack that isn't too difficult to avoid as long as you're able to keep a healthy distance from the fart cloud. This level ends in a pretty wild set piece that kinda reminded me of American McGee's Alice. After doing some strategic pissing, you catch a ride on a roller coaster minecart type thing and then exit the level through the mouth of a clown. You're now in the sanitarium level called Definitions of Insanity. This is another sort of puzzle-focused level that will see you trying to turn on these fountains, which contain a hot liquid that you can consume, and it will make your piss flammable. I should take a moment here and explain that there are 3 piss-related power-ups. In addition to the flame power-up that I've already mentioned, you can get freezing piss, as well as a piss that will act as a sort of confusion spell, triggering enemies to attack other enemies that are near them. You have access to several non-piss-based power-ups as well, like pills that will slow down time for everyone but you, pills that will make your kick and shovel attacks overpowered, and a power-up that gives you double firepower and unlimited ammo for a short time. There's also standard power-ups like an ammo refill, armor pickups, and of course, the health pipe.
Smokin'.
The sanitarium level introduces you to the tinfoiled, who are some sort of conspiracy theory victims. Which isn't to say that they are the victims of a conspiracy theory, but rather the result of going too deep into conspiracy theory research. Don't look too deeply into this game for any sort of coherent political statement. It takes shots at the vaccinated, the unvaccinated, 5G, conspiracy theorists, nerds, horny people, crazy people, the Illuminati. Everyone is fair game, and all we really want is a TV and some TP. Oh, and the autograph of Leon Dusk. Anyway, you will eventually use your fiery piss to clear out some dry leaves and make your way into the next level, titled Search for the Cure. This level features a few giant battles and some really fun exploration. It introduces aliens which will zap you with their ray guns, and there's some sort of thing going on with the Illuminati and aliens, and they have a spaceship and all these huge Illuminati statues with eyeballs and pyramids, but again, the game is not really saying anything on these topics. It's just a bunch of disjointed references that are used to make up some very fun set pieces and interesting enemies. And when you finally finish the level, you wind up in Area 69.
Kinky.
Here you'll battle more Illuminati types and aliens, and you'll see some things that suggest the aliens or the Illuminati are manufacturing the NPCs that you find in the suburbs. Again, it's not really making a point, but it's a very fun level to explore and has a lot of cool areas, including this sort of staged version of the suburbs, which reminds me a lot of the opening mission from Arcane's Prey. Once you make it through, you head on over to SIP, which is an acronym that is probably obvious, but it's going over my head at the moment. This is another boss battle, one that will have you use your grappling hook to navigate an underwater type area as you battle COVID-19 itself. You propel upward by grappling onto these rings, then you hit a target, and that target will help to temporarily lock the virus in place so that you can shoot it. Repeat this a few times, and we've completed the second episode. With COVID-19 conquered, the dude now has an abundance of TP, and he heads back to sleep. But the nightmare continues, and continues all the way to the Fluffy Friends Festival O Fun, which is a sort of furry-con / gaming convention where Leon Dusk, who again is an amalgamation of the protagonist from the game Dusk, the Postal Dude, and Elon Musk, is going to appear, and the Postal Dude is determined, for some reason, to get his autograph. Once again, you begin this episode with no weapons at all. I really enjoyed finding ways to take on these first few waves of enemies with super limited resources. This episode introduces the rest of the enemies in the game, which will include these cat people, these sentient cars, and many more. This is also where I really unlocked the power of the pussy blower. See, at first I mistook how to use it. I thought that you would fire these cats, then hold down the vacuum button to create 3 different streams of cat power vacuum energy that would damage any enemies who crossed the path of that sucking stuff. But that's not at all how it works. Instead, you just hit the vacuum button, and the last 3 cats that you fired immediately return to you. Although, they do damage any enemies that they will hit on their way back to your gun. This level took me way too long to complete, because I spent almost an hour not seeing a very obvious way to progress forward, but overall, it's a really fun environment with some fun references to other games, like the excellent Jupiter Hell. I was really glad at this point to see that the game was still going strong and not relying too heavily on reusing assets from the first 2 episodes. The next level is the VIP area, which is like a swanky set of back hallways to the main festival. In terms of combat and mechanics, this level is more of the same to a degree, but it was still a very fun one to get through. You encounter a vibrator-shaped rocket and eventually make your way into the next level, Bozo's Race to Space. It's unclear to me at this point if you're actually in space or not, but you are on a sort of space train or a train to the space rocket. I'm really not sure, but it features a number of really fun zero-gravity sections, in which you are of course propelled by your own farts. The music for this level does have a bit of a spy theme, and overall it did give me a bit of a Moonraker vibe. This is where I encountered the only serious bug in the game. I was trying to figure out where to go in this section and wound up jumping into an area that I probably shouldn't have had access to. But I did eventually go back and make it to the end of the level, and it appears now that the train has gone into hyperspace, which sends us to the Death Star. I mean the Dusk Star, but yeah, this is the Star Wars level. And again, it's a lot of fun. There's more zero-gravity stuff, and you've got these giant stormtroopers, or storm poopers, that are like a more aggressive version of the Burger Boys. And once you finally find all 4 of these space cartridges, you're finally on to the final level, wherein you finally come face to face with Leon Dusk, who immediately vanishes only to reappear as the other dude. He hops around and hits you with heavy fire, but if you're like me, you've stored up a ton of power-ups and take him out with relative ease. He then comes back, this time inside of a giant mech called the Tesla Borgelian, which puts up a pretty good fight, but again, if you're like me, you can take it out with relative ease. Now I don't want this to reflect negatively on the game, because I'm playing an early build that I have been assured will be fixed up by the time the game releases to the public. But the end really confused me. I hopped around for way too long before realizing that I had to stand in a very specific spot to then use my grappling hook and make my way up to the dude in his now blown out mech. And once I reached him, the game just ends. The version that I played does not have an ending cutscene, so I don't really know how the story resolves. I'm hoping that in the next day or 2 someone uploads it to YouTube, but regardless, I still had a lot of fun with this game. I don't normally go over the entirety of a game like this by myself, and I did leave out a lot of the fun encounters, enemies, set pieces, and jokes that you'll find throughout the game. But I was feeling excited, and I felt the need to go the extra mile after I totally trashed this game's demo. I've been excitedly watching the continued development of Postal 4, and it seems like the game is getting some significant fixes and tweaks every few weeks. Personally, I'd like to give Postal 4 a little more time in the oven before I really attempt to play through it all. And so I'm glad to have this game to scratch my Postal itch in the meantime. I missed a shitload of secrets and codex posters on my first run, so I'm definitely going to go back into this game and try to find them all. And now I have to ask, have you played Postal Brain Damaged? What's your favorite Postal game? For me, it's Postal 2, but this one is pretty high up in the ranks now. Meet me down in the comments, let's talk about Postal, and if you liked this video, throw it a like. And if you want more stuff like this, subscribe to Hidden Machine. We post new videos all week long. See ya!